This is Eurovision. Eurovision is the largest song competition in the world. With 163 million annual viewers, Eurovision is probably an event that you have heard of. Or maybe you haven't. I don't know you. But whether hearing about it from someone online or maybe stumbling upon a song from the competition, most are acutely aware of Eurovision even if they don't know it yet. However, especially in America, many people have no idea what it actually is or how it works. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with the epic sax guy, and it wasn't until 2019 when I questioned why this random guy was on a stage at something called Eurovision, and it led me down a very deep rabbit hole. I slowly found out that many songs I knew and loved were actually from this odd competition show, without even knowing what it was. Then I realized that those songs I loved were actually really bad, but I did find some amazing ones that I still love to this day, and I now invite you to come with me on a journey so you can fall down the rabbit hole of the Eurovision Song Contest as well. Like I said before, Eurovision is one of the most watched televised events in the world. Eurovision was created in 1956 to unite Europe after the many conflicts before. After growing and growing, it soon grew from 7 participating countries to reaching a peak of 43 in 2018. That's a lot of countries. And because of that, Eurovision is typically compared to the Olympics, just with singing instead of athletics. But personally, I would rather compare it to the Hunger Games, but neither really does it justice. The idea of Eurovision is that each country chooses a song and one artist, or a group of artists, that represent their country and then perform a song on the Eurovision stage. The performance can only be 3 minutes long and can only have 6 performers, dancers, or just people in general on stage. Crew doesn't count. The stage is split up into 3 main shows. There is the first and second semifinal, which we will talk about later, and the grand final, the biggest of them all. During these shows, viewers vote for their favorite entry, and in the grand final, it is also evaluated by juries. Whichever country wins at the grand final will then host the contest next year. This is just a quick rundown, but of course, things are much more complicated than this. So the show itself is split into 3 dates when the entries perform. The first 2 being on the first and second semifinals, as you can imagine, which are shown on different days than the grand final. I repeat, these are not the same thing. Regardless of how many countries compete that year, as countries may join or leave the competition depending on funding, interest, conflicts, etc. Only 10 countries will qualify for the grand final from each semifinal. Therefore, the grand final will always consist of either 25 or 26 songs. Wait, you might be asking, why 25 or 26? Didn't you just say that 10 songs qualify from each? Well, here's where things get fun. So there is 5 countries that contribute the most to funding and viewership, and those 5 automatically get through to the final. These countries are France, Germany, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Italy. These countries are called the Big Five, and while they receive a lot of criticism for getting a free pass to the finals, in all fairness, these 5 countries contribute more viewership than every other country combined. The country that is hosting also automatically gets to qualify, because it'd be really lame if they, hosted the whole thing and then got eliminated immediately. Therefore, on some years, in the event that someone in the Big Five were to win, only 25 countries make it to the final, but in the case of any other country winning, 26 countries will be in the final. Confused yet? Well, things get even more complicated. After getting to the final, the competing countries perform and then are given points from the public and jury. The jury is made of 10 jurors per country, and even if a country does not make it to the final, they will still have a vote in the winner. The jury makes up 50% of the overall points. The other half is made up by the public, and they participate through televoting, which you can imagine is voting through your telephone. Then, the entry with the most combined jury and public votes wins the contest.
183 points!
Also, small thing, so the first and second semifinal are actually entirely decided by televote. So there's no juries in the first and second semifinal, they're only in the final. Alright, so you may be having a few questions. For one, why would a country want to host the contest? It kinda seems like a lot of work. Well, Eurovision brings millions of tourists to the hosting city, and also the hosting country. And this is why I compare it to the Hunger Games or even the Olympics, as it brings massive economic gains and opportunities for winning countries. Eurovision is almost an advertisement for the country when it's not being a competition, including postcards, which are short little videos that play in between each entry during the downtime where the staff or crew are setting up the next act. These typically feature the artist visiting some exciting area in the country, and some contestants get to do a once-in-a-lifetime experience, while some get to trim bushes. It's always interesting to look at, and it's a good peek into a country and its tourism industry. Okay, editing Chad here. So this next part I thought was pretty boring, so for your convenience, I'm gonna speed it up by 3 times. Also, the country is a country is necessarily competing, and when the country is just playing what UK is participating, isn't the country itself, as a country is participating, not the broadcaster. So each country is broadcaster in the country, and it's typically voted on the contest, except for sometimes the contest sometimes makes it. That's one thing. And due to these broadcasters being in charge, this isn't quite like the Olympics. It isn't the most popular or best or objectively most talented artist representing their country. If that were the case, then the Beatles would have represented the UK, Dua Lipa would have represented Albania, ABBA would have represented Sweden. Okay, actually that one did happen, but generally speaking, popular artists do not always represent their countries. Eurovision is not a stage for the best of the best to fight to the death for their country's honor. Rather, it is more seen as like a jumping off point for local artists or industry plants, artists who are small but want to reach a large audience. And mind you, this does not mean that these artists are bad or untalented. There is always amazing show-stopping acts that are put on by relative nobodies. And all this really means is that one year you may get Celine Dion, yes, this actually happened, and the other year you might just get some guy off the street. Either way, it's given a platform to a lot of very popular artists like ABBA and Celine Dion, who were nobodies before the contest. Now, that being said, you might be a little bit curious on how each country finds out who will represent them. Great question. Strap in. So there's 2 main ways that a country selects its entry. There is also a third, but it's weird and convoluted, so get it off the screen for now. As for the 2 main ways, most of the time, countries will stick to one method, but it kind of can depend or change year to year based on how they're feeling. Each country gets a delegation that works with the broadcaster to figure out a way to select their entry, and delegations have a say in which of the following methods is selected. Selection method 1 is So internal selection refers to when a country's delegation specifically chooses an artist, song, or combination of the two, completely internally with no or relative no public input. Now, due to its secretive-ish nature, countries can have very different forms of internal selection. This may be the delegation reaching out to artists they like, such as when the UK ghosted Rina Sawayama. This is not a joke, this really happened, and they went with some untalented bozo instead. Or they can try finding a song, and then trying to find an artist, in many other ways. Most of the time, we have no real idea what is going on until a song is chosen or until an artist is chosen and they make an announcement on social media. In terms of public support, this method is by far the least popular because it gives the public no real control, yet it can work very, very well for countries. An example is the UK choosing Sam Ryder, a popular TikToker and artist from the UK, internally, with him reaching a 2nd place finish at the contest. Regardless of how much an internal selection is made, the defining feature is that an internal selection has no public input, and typically is a somewhat secretive process. The other selection type is much, much different. A national selection is a type of selection where a country hosts its own mini Eurovision, where the public votes on an entry competing with other entries exclusively from their country. These national selection shows can be massive, with Sweden's Melodifestivalen and Italy's Sanremo being massive, with tens of millions of viewers. Similar to Eurovision itself, these national finals have semifinals and then finals, but sometimes also have other stuff as well. But regardless of the national final, pretty much always, the winning entry becomes the country's entry for Eurovision. Unless there's some weird tomfoolery going on, but that's another topic for another day. Now, not all national selection shows follow the same rules and regulations as Eurovision. Some don't have juries, some don't have restrictions of how many people can be on stage, and some just take completely different routes. Like Germany's Chefsache, sorry if I pronounce anything wrong here, ESC 2025, where the top 5 songs were chosen by a random celebrity from Germany, who then kind of just made them get voted on. I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to explain, but sometimes national finals can be very messy, and sometimes even fun and possible to watch. An example of this is Moldova's national final that let pretty much anyone in because Moldova is a very small and underfunded country. So this included a song by Tudor Boombak, an 82-year-old man who forgot the lyrics of his song during a performance, silently staring into the crowd for 30 seconds. There was also a song made using AI, there was 4 songs that were disqualified, and a few years ago, during the Moldovan national final, a song from Miss Kadylov was a 3-minute song that only featured industrial grinding, which likely would have won if it wasn't disqualified. As you can tell from Moldova, national finals can be messy. Generally, national selections give public the most control over their entry, and is generally the most well-received form of selection. As if the entry sucks, they can just blame their fellow citizens, instead of choosing a delegation to take all the blame. So if for example, a delegation like the UK were to choose a terrible artist like May Mule, then it would be on the fault of the delegation rather than the public. Now, the cool thing about national selections is that they draw artists from all over the country to compete, with many songs losing out to better funded or more popular artists. This doesn't always happen though, and there are some examples of national final revolutions, such as Albania in 2025 being represented by duo Shordik Elektronik. That's not how that's pronounced, but I'm sorry. It's just gonna be on the screen. This duo, who won in a surprise victory, had actually beaten out the most popular artist in Albania as of now. And even though Elvana had like 30 dancers on stage and had a very basic and bland song, it was very popular, but somehow this duo, who was relative no ones, was able to win. Also in Sweden, a former winner of Eurovision, Mans Zemmerlo, was beaten out by a trio of Finnish men. While upsets like this can happen all the time, it's hard to neglect that due to the much smaller scale of these national finals, jury tampering and sabotage can and do happen. An example is Poland, which in 2023 decided to choose the song Solo by Blanka, who was a very well-known Nepo baby in Poland, instead of choosing the much more popular, compelling, and listenable song Gladiator by Jan. Gladiator is a song about the music industry, its exploitation of artists, and the excess of wealth by elites in order to express power over others. And this song was beaten out by a song which is about being better solo, with jury members allegedly choosing it because of Blanca's father and his connections to the industry. A lot of talent, and I mean a lot of talent, can be found within these national finals, but it can definitely be drowned out by unfair circumstances. But it can also be a great way to find a competitive entry. Do we have to talk about this? Each country chooses entries at a different time in the year, typically deciding before March, with the contest always happening in May. When preparing for the Eurovision stage, there is typically 3 things that the viewers and juries use to judge a quality of an entry. So let's talk about these 3 categories. In some cases, the song can make or break the entry. In my opinion, the good example of this is Georgia 2023, which had a song including lyrics such as Life's Love, Thing Is Known Like in Dreams, and Days in a Row, I'm Thinking I Know, My Love Is Not Fake, This Feeling Is Lord, which were so bad, it completely ruined the performance. However, a great song can also make an entry, as one could imagine. A good example of this is Saudade Saudade from Portugal in 2022. This featured a group of artists standing in a circle, clapping, and as some may call it, underwhelming, but the song itself was a very beautiful song that drew you in, and while it was simple, it was effective and entrancing, and it gave a great result. So having a good or even popular song can be very essential for having an entry, qualify, and even do well at the grand final. Pretty self-explanatory here, but vocals are either good or bad, on pitch, off pitch, and while there's really no nuance to there being good or bad vocals, there can be certain instances of vocals being different, and juries or televoters understanding it or not understanding it. A good example of an interesting vocal style that actually worked very, very well was Ukraine 2021 with its entry Shum. This featured a white voice technique, which is not really seen in the Eurovision Song Contest, but also in general, and it was a very unique entry that got a lot of jury points. Typically, the stronger and the more show-stopping a vocal, the more jury points you will receive. And the vocals are one of the main ways that juries can discern quality. So for televoters, it can be a little bit different, but even then, most people generally can say that a vocal is good or bad, where a song can be a lot more, debatable. This is one of my personal favorites. It is very important and often overlooked. An entry can be elevated by its staging. I would define staging as the way that the performance is given. It is the props, the camera angles, the movements, and the concept itself behind a performance, if that makes sense. A good example of staging and why it's important is Ireland 2024, which had a metal song by Bambi Thug, which I loved. I loved this song and I always thought it was amazing, but many people thought it would never qualify, especially after the performance on the late night show, which, you know what, Bambi did a fantastic job. It's mainly the late show's fault, but it didn't look great at that time. However, after giving one of the best stagings in the show's history, it was actually able to get a top 10 finish. And typically staging is meant to uplift the song, but sometimes a song can be completely awful and the staging can just make up for it. An example is Russia 2016, which in my opinion had a very, very subpar song, but was helped by a very, very impressive staging, which featured an illusion where a wall was given a slight incline and had pistons coming in and out that were invisible to the viewer but gave the illusion of the singer being suspended in the air and interacting with the projected objects. Also, Loreen in 2023 won with a great song and incredible vocals and a staging that consisted of 2 platforms being suspended above her, slowly rising throughout the entire performance. In fact, Loreen is kind of the main reason why stagings are even important. Loreen in 2012 had probably one of the best stagings we've ever seen, and it really revolutionized the way that Eurovision was as a show. And speaking of this, all 3 of these categories are important and honestly were displayed by Loreen. She had incredible vocals, she was doing vocal gymnastics the entire time, had a fantastic song, and amazing staging. Her song Euphoria was incredible, and Europe fell in love with it, and Loreen is probably one of the most popular Eurovision winners ever. And it's probably because of her performance, which incorporated all 3 of these categories in an insane way. Alright, so I apologize for the bad audio quality. I just got off of work, but I realized I never really made a conclusion for this video. So, I kind of want to talk about why you should care or why you should watch Eurovision. Personally, I really enjoy the contest because it combines 3 of my favorite things: music, geopolitics, and filmmaking/live event/broadcasting. I think that Eurovision is probably the most impressive event to show off these 3 things in a very beginner-friendly way, and I think that's a very big reason of why you should watch it if you're interested. And once again, the music is really, really good. Sometimes. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the social justice around the contest. I think it's very important to establish that the LGBTQ+ community and many other communities, especially in Europe, have really seen amazing things from this contest and a lot of visibility that was not really there before. It was a place where anyone could come and perform, and every country that was participating got to see it on a live stage. And so, for example, Donna International winning for Israel is the first trans woman to ever win Eurovision, and it was a really big deal, and it made really big social movements in Israel. And on the subject of Israel and their inclusion, while I personally think that they should not be included and they should not be allowed to rig basically the contest by spending so much on ads, it has brought up really, really good questions, and we're seeing the Eurovision community come together for a common cause, which is really cool. It's really cool to see, and I wish it was for better circumstances, but it's good that we're coming against something and that we're united on a front. The theme of Eurovision is united by music, and even if that's really not the case from the contest itself, the fandom and the artists competing really show that we can be united by music. So I think it's a really cool thing to watch every year, and if you don't want to support the contest, that's alright, but I would say consider supporting the artists and supporting the crew and show that put it on, rather than the EBU itself, because the EBU is only a small part of Eurovision. And as Bambi Thug said,
we are what the Eurovision is. The EBU is not what the Eurovision is. The EBU, I don't even care anymore. Them. The thing that makes this is the contestants, the community behind it, the love and the power and the support.
All right, that was a longer one, but I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for the bad mic quality. Have a great rest of your day.